What's your take on gold's recent run up? What signals do you think it's sending, and why has Bitcoin gone basically in the opposite direction during the same period?
Gold has had a really great 2024 and 2025. That is driven, in my view, by a few factors. One is a distrust in fiat, but specifically a distrust in other people's fiat. So, at a tactical level, you have flight to safety. You have people that saw the volatility with tariffs. They saw, some economic waves here. They're not sure what's going on. They see the inflation. They see the menu prices rising, and the consumer wanted to de-risk a bit. And gold was the quality traditional safety asset. That is the micro story. On the countrywide level, the nation state level, you've also seen a move by central banks trying to figure out where they're going to store their currencies and where they're going to store their value and in what basket of currency. The PBOC, so China Central Bank, has been a net buyer of gold. They are a little reluctant to be too embraced by the dollar and to embrace treasuries themselves. You can understand why. Obviously, with ongoing trade disputes, there's political reasons there that they may want to de-risk. There's also financial reasons. Having gold is perceived as something that is a durable asset. No central banker really was ever fired for having gold, as far as I know. So this is something that is as political as it is economic. I think also you've seen the second bucket, though, which is the reflexivity of the markets, which is gold started to go up. People get excited. And in today's environment, things that start to go up can continue to go up quite a bit. It's some sort of a weird, almost Newtonian law of economics now where people pile into a trade and it gets quite crowded quite quickly. So the further and faster gold climbed, the further and faster gold continued to climb. Now, that may result in gold continuing to climb further, but it may also result, as I think we've even seen in the past few weeks, in gold actually easing off a bit because it was a very crowded trade. And this is something that I think you've seen play into Bitcoin as well. When Bitcoin starts to go up a little bit, it then goes up a lot of it as people pile into the trade. You saw this in April, there was a mass decline, and then folks were back risk on in Q2 into Q3 and now in Q4. And there was a reflexivity to that, and the markets really drove Bitcoin upwards. Now, as we got into October, as you mentioned, there was a deleveraging event. Crowded trades in an era of deleverage very quickly. A lot of money gets wiped out, and then you reset the game board. And that is functionally a lot of what we've seen. So why has Bitcoin gone down whereas gold has gone up? Well, for a while, they were actually both largely going up. Bitcoin hit the mid 20s, say 125. Trade was probably pretty crowded. You were seeing lots of net inflows from ETFs, from accumulators, but you were seeing leverage. And then in October, the leverage on Bitcoin got wiped out a lot faster and more deeply than any sort of gold leverage, to my knowledge, which led to an underperformance now in Bitcoin relative to gold. People will often ask, is Bitcoin something that trades like gold, or is it more like NASDAQ? It's both. There are going to be times where Bitcoin is viewed as a risk-on asset. If you're speaking to a baby boomer, it's NASDAQ. It is the newfangled thing. It is something that is high risk, high volatility technology that they were trying to get comfortable with, the way they would get comfortable with buying QQQ. If you're speaking to Gen Z or Zoomer, they are more likely actually to view it more as this gold narrative. They want to store money in something. Gold is potentially a bit boomer for them. Crypto is exciting. It's new. They have more of a comfort with the role of Bitcoin in the global ecosystem. And so for them, it's a flight to safety. And so there's still this inherent tension, and this will continue to happen. Bitcoin is already ranked as if it were almost a top 10 currency in many ways. And so there'll continue to be this tension. Bitcoin has been less volatile this year, at least up through November, than many world currencies. And that's an interesting trend. You're already seeing the volatility start to shave off a bit. You're seeing this adoption. I think patience is going to be rewarded with Bitcoin, and we will see that appreciation long term.
Okay. Yeah, there are people in the space, in the community, that have talked about this idea of, after gold goes on a run, there being a rotation into Bitcoin. I think most recently, they usually point to, I think it's August of 2020, or sometime in 2020, where that happened very clearly. Do you see a major rotation from gold to Bitcoin happening anytime soon, given the big run up in gold that we've talked about, or Bitcoin reaching a new all-time high in terms of gold?
Thinking about what would drive Bitcoin to an all-time high, gold being one potential catalyst, it's interesting. Bitcoin historically has been driven by the tactical and the strategic. The strategic stuff is liquidity. The more liquidity there is in the market, the more dollars they print, the more the people lose trust in fiat. Bitcoin continues to trend up. It is this global monetary premium as a way to store value that over time goes up and down. But largely up. In the meantime, though, it is catalyst driven. tariff wars, the April situation with Liberation Day, some of the liquidity events you've seen, or the liquidation events you saw in October. It's hard. As I think Yogi Berra was the one who said, predictions are hard, especially about the future. And as I think about what would drive Bitcoin upward, catalysts are going to be a part of the situation. It's hard to foresee what the immediate upside catalysts are going to be. I think the upside thematic story is still pretty strong. As you're seeing inflation, something that is being tamed. You could see the Fed potentially do more cuts. If the Fed does more cuts, more liquidity enters the market. That good for Bitcoin. If the Bank of Japan wobbles, that could suck liquidity out of the system. Could be bad for Bitcoin. But if people get scared, they run into Bitcoin. It could be good for Bitcoin. So it's hard for me to ascertain day by day, week by week, what's going to drive the price of Bitcoin up or even down. But net, every day I wake up and I think about the Bitcoin value prop, which is that people basically are addicted to printing money. That's not going to change.
Gotcha. Really like how you pointed out there that it's catalyst driven. I think a lot of people forget that. My time watching Bitcoin, that's primarily one of the primary things I've noticed. Right, this thing moves on news, and you gotta you can't be so short term minded when that's the case, right? Because any tweet could come out tomorrow or something like that. But wanted to tie it all together here with some of the things we've been talking about. And the big question really is, and it's something that Michael Saylor has advocated for, do you think that now that gold has repriced higher, the US will sort of reset the system and demonetize gold to purchase Bitcoin?
It is an interesting question. That to me is, again, as much a political question as a financial question. It is fascinating to me how much of the financial world is driven by politics. Everything at its core, I firmly believe, has a political element. Trying to figure out where three people are going to go to lunch is a political decision as much as anything. And so as I think about what the United States is going to do with Bitcoin relative to gold, it's the same premise. As a Bitcoin advocate, de-risking the United States monetary position via Bitcoin makes sense to me. But again, I view it as a de-risking. The average age in Congress is, I think, now in the 70s in the Senate, or at least the 60s. These are not necessarily folks today that view Bitcoin as a de-risking event. So I need to go to battle with the army I have here, which are folks that are still getting comfortable with the Bitcoin story, still trying to understand what it means for them, for the economy, for their constituents. And to get something like that done, we're going to need their support. Now, the president himself, he is pretty crypto savvy. He wants to keep this industry in the United States. He sees the strategic value of what we do in Bitcoin and Bitcoin mining. He sees the value in it. That to me is a huge win. Having his support means a lot. Getting an equivalent amount of support in the legislature so that we're able to make substantive and enduring changes. That's something that I want to see more of. That's something that we're actively involved with. This is, again, a question of education. It's a question of explaining to folks that this is a de-risking activity, not a risking activity. No one ever got fired for buying IBM is the classic quote. So you need people to think that way about getting them to de-risk gold for Bitcoin if you really want to see the US do something like move Fort Knox onto the blockchain.
Yeah, that's maybe a tall order if the just having the stockpile as defense, accumulating as offense, demonetizing gold and then purchasing Bitcoin. That's like that's I don't know if that's a Hail Mary or what that is, but
I've always viewed to me, life is a series of tall orders on short time frames. So never say never. This could easily result sooner than you or I predict. But again, it will come down to education.